this whole entirety of universe, right? जो पहले possible नहीं था, अब possible है. In your imagination, right? That also opens up a path to a different kind of things, a different kind of approaches and ease of access of creativity that has otherwise been inaccessible. Think of this particular prompt. ठीक है? हम ये बोल रहे हैं किसी image generator को कि create the image of an older man with a grey beard and a white cap. इस को देखो इस prompt को और बताओ कि इसमें क्या गड़बड़ है. मतलब अगर तुम एक ट्रस्ट एंड सेफ्टी टीम हो जो किसी सोशल मीडिया कंपनी का तुम ट्रस्ट एंड सेफ्टी टीम लीड करते हो, तुम्हारे पास ऑप्शन है, तुमको मतलब तुम अपने प्लेटफॉर्म पे इंश्योर करना चाहते हो कि जो प्रॉम्प्ट्स खराब है वो प्रॉम्प्ट्स तुम्हारा मॉडल नहीं लेगा इनपुट में, तो इस प्रॉम्प्ट में तुम्हें कुछ गलत दिख रहा है क्या? Right? And you're talking about the millions and millions of prompts every minute, right? उस स्केल पे तुम इसको कैसे मॉडरेट करोगे? कर सकते हो, करना चाहोगे? If somebody comes to you and say that this is the prompt, would you be ever willing to moderate? Right? This seems harmless, right? Let's see what it creates, right? And if you want, you can also try it in your any image generators on your phone. But this is what it creates. This is Meta AI, that's Gemini, that's ChatGPT. And this seems, depending on how you see it, it seems slightly problematic, maybe not so much, until you see this happening. Now, all of the images are now accompanied by a narrative in which you then say that who is the perpetrator, who is the victim, what is happening, right? This is like an older Muslim man has now has sexually abused a particular child. This was entirely fake, right? And it has 174.7k views, right? Similarly, if you look at this particular prompt, कि ये prompt में इकलौता चीज जो आपको थोड़ा प्रॉब्लमेटिक लग सकता है वो है syringe, right? वो कहीं syringe बोलता है, injector syringe. इसके अलावा when you really look at it, read it, तो it's very difficult to figure out क्या problematic है, right? But if you let it pass through image generators, it's going to create images like this. That would be fine then in narratives like this. Which are then very broadly propagated across platforms, right? So let's take a step back and think about fear. किस-किसको डर लगता है? आपको डर लगता है? मुझे भी. मुझे बहुत डर लगता है, थोड़ी तो पड़ी रहती. But what was the last time you had this experience of fear in which your body was shaking? Right? उस मोमेंट पे जाने की कोशिश करते हैं जब हमें बहुत डर लगता है. किसी भी वजह से हो सकता है कोई एक्सीडेंट हो गया हो, कुछ हो गया हो. We were in a place where we were feeling a lot more threatened. उस मोमेंट को याद करने की कोशिश करते हैं. याद है किसी?
The responses will be muted because not most of us are familiar with Hindi.
Oh, sorry, you just joined. I didn't ask it because all of these people were comfortable.
They do?
Yes.
And then if Shaban is okay, you can tell me.
Yes. Are you comfortable with Hindi?
I am.
I am. I understand both of them. Okay, but taking a step back to that moment of fear, if you go back in that moment, तो what clarity did you have? आपको क्या clarity थी इस moment? क्या आपको पता था कि कौन खतरा है और कौन हमारे साथ है? ये समझ ली उस मोमेंट में? मतलब कि कौन किससे खतरा है मुझे, किसका वो. What else did you feel? Did you feel that you have to act? ये फीलिंग है कि हमें कुछ करना चाहिए, है ना? उस डर के मोमेंट में. Do you think? And even though हो सकता है कि आपने उस मोमेंट के बारे में बाद में सोचा हो और अब आपके पास एक डिफरेंट अंडरस्टैंडिंग हो, बट अगर उस तरह का मोमेंट दोबारा आपकी जिंदगी में वापस आएगा, तो अब आपने जो लॉजिक उसको रैशनलाइज किया है उस इवेंट को, आर यू गोइंग टू एक्ट फ्रॉम दैट रैशनलाइजेशन और आर यू गोइंग टू एक्ट फ्रॉम द फीलिंग्स दैट यू फेल्ट व्हेन यू फेल्ट फियर? आपको क्या लगता है? दोबारा when that moment comes in your life and hopefully it never does, but if that happens, आप उस फीलिंग से एक्ट करोगे या फिर आपने जो रैशनलाइजेशन किया है उसका बाद में अपने कॉन्शियस ब्रेन के साथ उससे एक्ट करोगे? रैशनलाइजेशन? Who thinks rationalization? Makes sense, right? But a lot of my background is in anthropology. I'm a digital anthropologist. I did my PhD in artificial intelligence for cultural science. And if there is one thing that all anthropologists agree, सारे के सारे anthropologists एक बात पे agree करते हैं कि fear is the center of our identity, not rage. Rage is a response to fear. For the entirety of human history, हमारी human history के बड़े इतिहास में, we have always been hunted upon. हम apex predator नहीं हैं. We have been group hunters. We have always been hunted on. So fear is what drives a lot of things in our life. Sometimes our entire personalities are centered on this idea of what we try to prevent. Right? वो कौन सा harm है जिसको prevent करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं? We shape our entire lives around that idea. So we are a very fearful species, and fear has a very central role in shaping our identity. But what happens that when somebody is able to constantly incite this sense of fear daily in your social media feed, क्या होगा? आपका fear हो सकता है कि हो सकता है आपकी जानने में, आपकी फैमिली में किसी फीमेल मेंबर को कोई आके ड्रग्स देगा, आप जिस ट्रेन से जा रहे हैं उसके रास्ते में कोई पत्थर रख रहा है, आपका प्लेस ऑफ वर्शिप कोई जला रहा है, कोई there is attempts of rape that are being made, child sexual abuse, somebody is stealing smaller child from these localities. तो फिर आपके जो जितनी भी जगह से आपको थोड़ा डर लग सकता है, उस जगह का कंटेंट आपको बार-बार दिखाया जाएगा आपका. How do you think it will shape your political choices? आपकी राजनीतिक सोच कैसे इन्फ्लुएंस करेगा, आपका डिसीजन मेकिंग कैसे इन्फ्लुएंस करेगा, आपका सेंस ऑफ अदर जो है उसको कैसे इन्फ्लुएंस करेगा? Anybody has any ideas? आपको लगता है कि आप you will develop this innate sense of othering based upon what you see in these images and videos? ऐसा होगा? Anybody who thinks ऐसा नहीं होगा? Okay. So me and Karen is a journalist at home. We discovered around 76,000 incidences of these images across South Asia. So because I'm presenting in India, this is very India focused, but this is happening across South Asia, in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, all of them. And there is this minority, and this could be any minority, has been constantly projected in these ways of doing harm to the majority across these images. So when we started uncovering, we were independently organizing this, arranging this dataset, and Karen was also studying that, so we came together to work on it. And out of this 76,000, you can see that, particularly in India, you could see that how they were being used. So whether this is a discourse around disruption of public services, raping a child, or molestation, they did. So what we did is that we created this, used a certain amount of model. Back in time when we did this study, image models were not that great. So we created a shared semantic space. If any of you are from computer science, you would know that models have a certain amount of semantic space in which they understand concepts, right? So we use that kind of a semantic spacing to be able to understand how models are thinking about these images. Then we fed around 76,000 images that we have uncovered from these real instances into them to generate 4 kind of prompts to the analysis of that image, to reverse engineer what that prompt might have been. So this is a model generated prompt without the identities. This is in which we are telling it that identities are added. So there is a Muslim man that we then identify the religious identity of this. Then we have a one-line hate prompt in which we talk about Muslims being perpetrated. In the other one, there is another hate prompt that's talk about Muslims being perpetrators and Hindus being the victims. We have done that across South Asia by changing the identities of majority and minority. So we get these 4 type of prompts. And out of 76,000 incidences that we had uncovered, there were around 8-9 themes that were consistent. For example, the public, wait, yeah. For example, these ones, right? And you get something of, if you're going to put this through Meta AI, you get all of these images for all of those photo prompts that I've shown, right? You get these images. And similarly for the other ones, right? In which there is certain amount of CSAM, molestation, or then again some certain amount of religious influence in classroom. And that's true for all kind of generators. So you have ChatGPT, Copilot, Adobe Firefly, all of them agreed to make these images. And if you look at the percentage rate in which they accepted all of this, Meta AI tops this chart with Adobe Firefly and slightly less for ChatGPT. Copilot has a very different kind of trust safety mechanisms. So they do not technically eradicate this, but they still have lesser chances of generating these images. Meta AI creates the most photorealistic images for the most hateful prompts, which was the challenging part, because Meta AI, you don't need a separate account. You can always use WhatsApp to create this. The other thing that we got super interested was whether it doesn't matter, right? You can create these kind of hateful posts all the time, hateful images all the time, but it wouldn't really matter if it's not impactful, because theory, particularly in AI swapping, tells us that when people create AI content, people don't want to consume it, right? Because you see this is AI generated, you are less likely to believe it. You also feel it's very sloppy to do that. So that's a standard theory. But in our advantage, what happened was that a lot of these accounts were posting it in between of their regular hate content, right? So you got this content that's AI generated, but same accounts are also posting for the same audience in the same time frame the content that is not AI generated. So this becomes a certain amount of pseudo-randomized control trial for us to really figure out whether AI generated hate imagery works. Turns out to be it gets more than 3 times more views. You get almost triple times the comments, and you get significantly higher retweets if you use AI generated hate imagery in your post. A lot of hate pages who were losing momentum because the election cycles have passed, they were able to recover their following and engagement because of this, because of the hate imaging. So it does work. Then we wanted to figure out what kind of image models are being used into this. Yes, please.
So in the previous slide, when you mentioned about the hate images are getting 3x engagement, etc., have you also compared this with some other domain which is not related to these type of images? So it could be, let's say, a LinkedIn post or anything like that, not related to hate or anything like that. And is a similar type of pattern visible there also or not?
This is interesting. But then I think it would then go into the sampling problem. Because if we sample content that doesn't belong to the same domain, it wouldn't act as a true control.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why in particular this.
But I was more looking in terms of just AI generated content and non-AI generated content.
Not so.
And the other aspect is that today there's a lot of content which could be a hybrid. So
Yes.
maybe the imagery is sort of prompted even by another image, okay, which could be a non-AI, and same way about text also.
That would have been an actually perfect control if that happened within the same. Because what actually also happens is, then you bring in another variable of range. Usually hate post and hate content has a certain amount of community that engages a lot with the content. And when you validate this model or whatever sampling techniques and analysis units you are putting in here with content and communities that do not belong in the same domain, you get results that are very skewed because they don't see the same amount of engagement within those communities. So the networks are not that rich to do and replicate analysis that way. That's why sadly we could only do pseudo-randomized control trial. But that would be, if that happens, that would be really interesting to see, especially if controlling for those variables. Thank you. The other thing that we wanted to figure out what models and what platforms are doing this. So we trained smaller models to be able to detect the features that are very often present in Meta AI generated images. And we were able to see that 58% of them came from Meta AI. For 42 other percent, we did a lot of reverse engineering and then cosine similarity to see which models do perform better to provide that access. And also to be 42% of them could have come from a ChatGPT-like model, so DALI 3. The thing is, we shouldn't have been doing what we did previously because there is something called C2PA that exists in this domain, in which all AI-generated image has to be put to use, right? There has to be a marker that's able to validate that. We realized that none of these 76,000 images had a C2PA credential, which was very weird to see. And since then, we have worked very closely with C2PA in jailbreaking their content watermarking and essentially figuring out the other ways to watermark images without major distortions. But coming back to the first question, that it's a trust and safety nightmare in that real sense. How do you moderate these images when the prompt itself is not toxic, but the images that they generate are toxic, right? So prompt, whatever user provides is not toxic, but it's going to generate images that are super toxic. And that's being a trust and safety nightmare for everyone. Slightly other way to look at it is to actually have image trust and safety models. That's only work at image level, but they are computationally heavy. So if you are a computer scientist or if you are interested in this area, I would invite you to think about it. If you have certain ideas, do reach out to us. We work in close partnership with Roost, which essentially provides open source tooling to all kinds of tech companies. That's my email that you can reach out to. And what questions do you have? Do you have any questions?
I think that was wonderful.
So the second last slide, you were saying that in just the previous slide,
Yes.
prevention by design. So how does this happen? So that's the most, so that part we get it, that yes, there are these type of things. But how do we sort of prevent that?
So this is interesting in a couple of parts, because when we work very closely with Meta on their trust and safety global team. And one of the things that happened was when we reached out to Meta before working with Karen, they told us that it doesn't violate their community standard. So first of all, you designed this image generation tool that you have made sure everyone has access to. You don't need to make an account at chatgpt.com or you don't have to download another app, you don't have to go to a domain. It's available on your WhatsApp, your Facebook Messenger and everywhere. And then it's able to create these images without any safety check. You can still create all of these images by the way. And then the next thing you do when we reach out and tell you that this is the scale of the problem and this is very effective hate campaigning, you tell that it doesn't violate your community standards. So two different safety features. You are relying now on if it goes to a certain level of chaos, if people come and there is a huge amount of outrage for it, that's only when you will try to do something about it. Second is that your community guidelines do not cover the outcome of your own tools. So which was interesting. That's when the news broke out and then eventually led to certain amount of trust and safety here. Third part is also how do you start from a prevention mindset, right? And I think this is a bigger problem in technology design. हम क्या करते हैं? Your platforms, right? Whatever you use, Facebook, Instagram, सब use कर रहे हो, YouTube. They allow you to become more of who you currently are. They don't let you become who you want to be. तो हम सबका एक वर्जन है जो हम आज एग्जिस्ट करते हैं, एक एस्पिरेशनल वर्जन है, राइट? जिसमें हम कुछ और बनना चाहते हैं. हम मे भी अपना टाइम बेटर मैनेज करना चाहते हैं, हम कुछ नई चीजें सीखना चाहते हैं, राइट? तो एक एस्पिरेशनल जो वर्जन है वो ये प्लेटफॉर्म्स इनेबल नहीं करते. एक घंटे में इंस्टाग्राम पे करीब 10 लाख वीडियो अपलोड होता है. आप अपनी रील्स में उस समय तो 30, 40, 50 वीडियो देख रहे हैं ना. तो this platform has made these design choices in which you see only very minute percentage of content, and that's essentially targeted at who you are and who you in that particular moment, it doesn't allow a lot of aspirational choices to be made, both in terms of its recommendation engine, but also in the feed, right? So, prevention by design is a larger framework, and if any of you are interested, there's an organization that we are part of, Generative. It's called Council for Tech and Social Cohesion. We have very recently put together a roadmap for regulators in designing a pro-social internet. It's live now. So if you are really interested in that idea, how to prevention by design, how to invite that into technology ownership by design, that's one way to look at it.
And I'm asking an anthropologist this question. That when you see images like that, which are clearly horrifying, which are to a sane, simple mind meant to evoke strong reactions, doesn't the nature of the image itself kill the message? You know, I would assume rationally that if people see those horrible messages, they will blame the creator rather than blame some community somewhere.
It's interesting, actually, and I would approach this from two different perspectives. One is that we do carry, and my master's was in neuroscience, we do carry this particular, what you call, box around our head, which has these small holes, right, for information.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with our smartness, and I will come to that in a second time.
Yeah.
Then these holes are some shapes, right? These are some circles shape, triangle, whatever is it. And the information that only able to incite these particular emotions or fit those holes is the only information we let come inside.
Right.
So these are filters that are triggered by fear, novelty, right? This is new. तो उस तरह के जो है hate, for example, or negative emotions trigger them way faster than positive emotions. Right? Kindness, compassion, all of them take a lot of time to fill information in. But hate, anger, fear is in fact a perfect driver. तो वो information बहुत जल्दी हमारे अंदर register हो जाती है. Even if we don't believe it, even if we don't think that this is true, even then it creates a amount of subtle mindset shift that eventually, when repeatedly triggered, it cements that amount of idea. The second side of this is our brain is very political in nature. So back in time, I used to throw people. Throw is not the right term. I used to invite our participants into a machine called fMRI, Functional Medical Resonance Imaging Machine, that allows us to study the brain and the blood consumption in it. And we would throw very smart people inside it. So we'll do a lot of IQ testing in terms of rational analysis testing to be able to figure out how smart people are. Then they will talk to them depending upon their political ideology. We also did political ideology testing. Then we'll talk to them from a different political ideology. So let's say somebody is on the left side, we'll talk to them from right perspectives. And if they are on the right side, we'll talk to them from left perspectives. And very often what we saw is the same part of your brain get activated when you start receiving political information that are responsible for your survival mechanism. So fight, fright, and fight. So you think you're talking to someone from a politically different perspective with facts and data and opinion, but they think you put a knife to their throat. And you can never talk to someone who's trying to protect themselves from you, like in the ways you're going to kill them. So I think that's the other side of it. That our brain perceives all kind of information not rationally, but very much grounded in our political ideologies to a level where they are able to bring our body in survival mode. And that's why talking across political partisanship is a challenge that we are very ill prepared for. And if you're really interested, we have a fun project called Bunk with Kindness, which relies on over the course of last 10 years by utilizing these advancements in positive psychology and computational linguistics. We have trained these models that's able to real-time detect the language when people would actually change their mind. So we are running an RCT in Sri Lanka and Nepal in checking whether bunking fake news with kindness and compassion is much more effective. So if you are interested, you can check it out at workwithkindness.dignitydifference.org. Yes.
Just a quick thing.
Yes,
And I don't want to ask this question to get an answer, but generally, do societies or do individuals tend to generalize, or do they tend to look at data rationally? Because if you show me 5 pictures, do I naturally tend to generalize, or do I naturally think, okay, these are 5 guys who are bad?
It's interesting because it depends on two things, right? One is how much access do I have this other, right? So for trust, do you folks like playing games?
Yeah.
There's a game, and at this moment I've forgotten its name. There's a digital game which puts game theory to testing. Game theory is this great piece of ways of categorizing information. That is one, I think, 9 Nobel Prizes in different fields.
Yeah.
So this is a game theory based simulation that looks at what makes people trust each other. And we know 3 things work, especially in large group of circle with all kind of identities. One is that people should be able to be in the same place, right? A certain amount of mutual space in which they also benefit from each other. So there has to be non-zero sum game. So regular interaction, non-zero sum games means that by participating, everyone benefits.
Yeah.
And the third is there has to be low communication gap. So low disinformation, low hate speech. And that's very difficult to achieve online. Online ऐसा कभी नहीं होगा, 2 identity के लोग लेके आ जाओ and they benefit immensely from participating in the conversation. So we are into this limbo in which online spaces are designed in a way to loosen the trust, not in the ways to amplify that. So I think that does remain a challenge.
Yeah, that's a substantial jump.
Yes. But in South Asia, we are also very ill prepared, and I was talking to a dear friend here about why we need a lot of rigorous approaches to understanding this. A lot of really amazing efforts to build experimental studies into this, which we have done very poorly. Hopefully do that.
Sure.
Okay, are we on time? Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone joining. Everything